You received a call from an inmate at the Department of Corrections. This call will be recorded and monitored. If you wish to block any future calls of this nature, dial 7 now. To accept this call, press 5 now. To decline this call, hang up.
Well, hello, Rita. How are you? Yeah. Well, it's the same old out here, but we are making progress, so I'm not going to complain. Yeah, that's good. And the more you talk to people, the more likely somebody is going to be to listen. And so don't stop talking. If there's issues going on in there, you need to let folks know. You have rights just like the rest of us. Now, I know the Constitution classifies you pretty much as a slave, but that doesn't mean that your loved ones should have their rights stripped from them. They have rights to communicate, and they have rights to work with you and help you. And none of those rights should ever be stripped. And if you're limited with your access because of infraction or something, I can understand that. But food, clothing, medical, these are not things that we want the government playing around with. And in your particular case, you're having a lot of medical issues, and they're only going to get worse if we don't promote that problem that you're having in there with the medical. Okay, and I've heard a few doctors just get frustrated and leave, or maybe there's a staffing problem, like with nurses or something. We need to emphasize that instead of building new prisons or dropping more funds onto the penal system. We need to get somebody in there to find out what can be done to improve the situation with what we got. If we have a budget, we need to learn to live within that budget. My solution is just don't send so many people to prison for such a long time. You got a person who steals a car and they're put in there for a decade or two, and it's not they're not really solving the problem by locking them up. Yeah, I know. There are a lot of people in there that need to be. And I'm thinking if we take a couple of prisons within the state, classify them as maximum, and then put the proper staff in there, I think the public will be happy. And I think we'll be able to save some money. And saving the sanity of our neighbors will be will be right there on the top of the list, because these folks that would recommit crimes if they were free will just be locked up in that place, and they'll have the proper staff to keep an eye on them. But then when you drop these things, these extra burdens on prisons, I I don't know. It doesn't really help the inmates. It doesn't help the staff. It doesn't help the community to create new problems for each prison. Yeah, and that's what we're looking to do. We want the
You have
justice
60
system
seconds
to
remaining.
understand that there's more to a crime than just somebody getting greedy for money, or somebody who's addicted to drugs and wants to get money to buy drugs. There's a way to work with that individual and come to a conclusion that will help reduce recidivism. It works in other countries.
You have 30 seconds
And
remaining.
I know gun control advocates, they love to mention other countries as these people don't have a lot of weapons, and so there's not a lot of murder. But those other countries also concentrate on individual behavior and psychological issues, and we just don't. Right? Yeah. And background is an important part. Well, hopefully we can get that stuff out there. So keep talking, keep sharing your information. I'm really glad you do that.
Thank you for using inmate call. Goodbye.
Hello, welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I am your host, Joel Wilborn, and I would like to talk about prison reform. Now, as a prison reformist, my job is to present to you, the public, the things that are going on inside the prison. Most notably, those things that are against policy, against the law, or that violate human rights, and things that are going on that's the norm but should be improved. And most importantly, as a prison reformist, I want to see to it that people get out of prison and don't commit another crime, whether it's the same crime that they were convicted of or if a new crime. They shouldn't go into prison as a bad person and come out even worse, like Shane Goldsby said. I want people to come out of prison and never go out, never go back. That also involves the justice system and the law enforcement, state and federal, local laws. It's a huge picture. We're not just focusing on one thing. In order to have an effective penal system, we need to have an effective justice system. We need to have effective rehabilitation, community centers, public support. There's all kinds of things that go into this healing process. I know when I post things on my social media, I'll get comments asking me why I want to help somebody. Why are you helping this child molester or this human trafficker or murderer? And that's one of the reasons that I do prison reform is because of that misconception. The public is misinformed. They think that prison reform and the people who advocate for the prisoners, they think that we are supporting bad people, but nobody is supporting this crime. Your neighbor could be involved in human trafficking. And maybe your neighbor is in a car accident. The community bands together to try to do a GoFundMe, deliver food to the family, and you don't know this person is involved in human trafficking. Now, later on, when the investigation comes along and the person is found to be a human trafficker, people could look at you and say, well, why did you take hot meals over to the family? Or why did you support the GoFundMe account? And you could easily say, well, I didn't know, and that was not my intention. Had you known, things would have been different. Most likely, there wouldn't have been a community support for this person. Well, the folks that are locked up, we already know what they do. We know they committed a crime. We know they were convicted, and we know they went to prison. And so the chance of us clearing that up, fixing it so to the point that all of us make mistakes, the key is learning from that mistake. If these people are violent criminals, most likely they should be in prison for a very long time. But let's say the person did commit murder and got a 20-year sentence, and this person is close to getting out. We could keep condemning this person for being a murderer, or we could work with this person and try to get this person out so that when this person moves into a community, the residents don't feel threatened. So when it comes to supporting your neighbors, it's easy to support somebody that you don't know anything about. And 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. We're throwing all these funds and all this support to people, and we really don't know their background. We don't know if these people have a body buried in their backyard. We don't know if this person is actively involved in embezzlement. We just know what we hear. But with the person who is a child molester and has to come out and register on the sex offender registry, we know that person. We know what that person did. So the difference between a reformist and somebody who doesn't want to work with the prisoners is we know what we're dealing with. And our goal is to prevent it from happening again. Whereas you think locking a person up solves all problems, you really have to step back and think about that. Because as children, when we have responsible parents, if we do something wrong, let's say we're at school and kids are picking on us, and one of the kids walks up and just berates you, and so you take a pencil and stab the person. And then, of course, you're going to the principal's office, parents are called, and your parents come in and they're going to say, you shouldn't have done this. A good parent, of course, will educate you, work really hard so that you won't commit this crime again and that you learn from your lesson. And if you're, let's say your cell phone is taken from you for a week, can't use your cell phone. Now, you may find other ways to communicate on the cell phone, maybe use your friends, get on online or something. But, you don't have your phone where you can take your pictures or you can make calls anytime you want, check the internet. And so you'd consider that a punishment. But imagine if your parents used that pencil stabbing thing for the rest of your life. And you could say, well, you took my phone away for a week, and that was very inconvenient for me. And you could also say I didn't stab anybody else the whole time I was in grade school. And you could say you did a very good job. I learned my lesson, and I teach that to my family. But if your family kept using that against you, it's almost as if you've learned, you've moved on, they haven't. And it could cause a lot of conflict. And when I see people go to prison, I want them to know you're in that prison for this reason. You got this sentence for this reason. And there's things in prison, maybe they're not able to watch the shows they like to watch or listen to the podcast, or maybe they take certain medicine to alleviate pain and they're just reduced to aspirin. These are things that are not illegal because they're not a law that they have to require these things in prison. But it just makes it to the point where it's not fun to be in prison, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be dangerous, but it should be an inconvenience. And you should learn that this is not someplace you want to go back to. And I've talked to a few people that have gone back to prison. Some of them, they just feel that they do better in prison. They get better customers for their drug dealing, or they have better control, or they can get better getting away from certain people. They have more control of their life. I don't know. There's various reasons. And those people, they're on a different plane. But those that commit the crime and they're sitting in there and they're suffering from trauma. I should not have done this. What was I thinking? Now look what has happened. I ruined my whole life. My family disowns me. These are things that are traumatic to the folks. And it's also motivating because they don't want to go out and commit this crime again. And so we need to talk to these people. We need to find out what caused this. Why did you do this? And the results are different per person. And I like to work on them on a case by case. I've had a lot of success because people get out and I do my very best to either give them the support or find the support for them. One thing I learned when I was in customer service, when you're talking to a customer, you don't want to lie to the person. But if the person asks a question and you don't know the answer, the best response is, I don't have an answer for you, but I will look it up and get back to you. It shows that you care. And that's a good way to look at this prison reform effort, where we don't have all the answers to all the different unique situations that these people go to. But it's our job to try to find out, try to find that answer, try to work with the people and see what we can do to prevent it from happening again. Of course, the bottom line is when people commit crime, it's all on them. You do the crime, you do the time. Nobody argues with that. It's within your power to do good and evil. Now, of course, in the case of Shaylin Altus, she was taught that the bad things that were happening in her childhood were actually good. And that's on the parents. That's on her trusted family. And she just got bad information and it wound up with a terrible ending. And I don't really think she should be in that situation, but that's because nobody really gave her the upbringing that she deserved, that a lot of us get. But those that do get these good upbringings, that know the difference between good and evil, they grow up and they know kidnapping people and holding them hostage or selling them to other people as sex slaves, they know that's wrong and they do it anyway. Those folks can't be treated the same way as Shaylin. And so we got to show them this is the result of what you did. Crime does not pay. This is a good example of that. And so it's nice to know that these people are sitting in a prison around all these folks, a lot of them violent offenders, a lot of them con people. They're thinking about their own best interest and they don't care what happens to the folks around them. They're in that situation. And then you have somebody like a prison reformist who comes into their life, or a community leader, or an advocate, or even a family member that just takes the moment to listen to them and give them a chance to do it right. So when I get these comments about helping the bad guys, no, I'm not promoting crime. I don't want terrible things to happen to good people. I want it to end. And I have an opportunity to work with the people who actually commit these crimes, who can actually give me advice that will help other folks not to. And of course, being a prison reformist is a good icebreaker. People want to know something, and I'll tell them a few people I'm working with. A lot of them are high profile folks, and I'll let them know what I'm doing to work with it. Sometimes I'll give them the name and DLC number, and they're able to contact them on Securus and get a good relationship going. And it's nice to hear that there's people out here who are willing to go an extra effort to prevent future crimes. And working with folks who are locked up is a great way to do that. I would love to see former convicted people get out and do motivational speaking at schools and community centers and maybe even job fairs or special events. That would be great. And especially taking questions. That would also be great. There's a few celebrities that are getting involved with it, and I support that 100%. I'm glad these people who don't need this extra burden in their life are choosing to do this to help folks. And if we spend many hours and lots of money to help one person get out and not commit a crime, it's worth it. We don't need a mass amount of success. One or two will do. So the result is great. And the effort, there's a lot of it that requires a lot. But in the end, you do more good than bad, especially if you just sit around and do nothing. At least you're making an effort. And in some cases, just like police officers, they can come to a crime, help an individual, never see that person again, but that person could grow up and become a cop just because this person came into their life at that moment and just impressed them. You could say or do something to a person who's locked up that could greatly affect them, and a crime could be prevented after their release because they're thinking back on something you did or said. I hope you realize that it's not that difficult to prevent crime in your neighborhood. The worst case scenario is just to do nothing, to ignore these folks. You watch movies and you relate to one of the characters on there, and you'll see them do something that you think, I would have done it differently, or I would have given different type of advice. A lot of times you have that advantage. And I would really encourage you to reach out to these people and talk to them. Well, thank you for tuning in. And hopefully you'll be able to talk to your family and maybe connect with somebody who's in prison. And let's all work together to bring crime down. Go out and have yourself a magnificent day and make super fantastic memories for tomorrow.